this time.
It says we're live.
I think it worked this time.
Yay! Now I put up the tin toy. That's tradition for you.
It is
Maybe I should give it one
tradition.
full orbit.
Good morning.
Good morning.
We
Just
have,
do our show?
well, I was just going to say we had a momentary technical difficulty, so I do hope that you find us because this is now.
Bridge to a Better World. I'm Teresa Mitchell.
I'm Ani.
Yeah. Okay. So there's news from
As you might
Ukraine.
expect.
As you might expect, there's a lot of news from Ukraine, and rather than pass on an article, I thought I'd just read the headlines. There's a set of headlines from the New York Times, and they are as follows, with commentary. Kiev's gains. Do you say Kiev or Kiev these days?
Kiev.
Kiev's gains near Bakhmut raise alarms in Russia that Ukraine's counteroffensive has begun. No, it hasn't, as far as I can tell. I mean, the Ukrainians are doing well and moving into Bakhmut. There's a video report on YouTube by a Ukrainian that's been following the fight in Bakhmut for, months now, I guess. And it's the grittiest thing I've ever seen in terms of war reporting. That and the other videos coming out of Ukraine are the bloodiest thing to actually be shown to the public about war, I think, to the American public, since the Vietnam War. And Vietnam War, although, curated and edited, actually showed what was going on from time to time and caused sensation in the United States, which is why they only allow embedded, which is to say very carefully restricted reporting on U.S. Actions now.
Because war doesn't really stand up to the daylight test.
No, it really doesn't. I mean, there's no good guys, bad guys narrative that will survive actually looking at what happens. Both sides torture. I mean, obviously Russia is the aggressor, and by far it's easy for me to say that I support Ukraine in clearing their territory of aggressors, of invaders. That's not a problem. But war, oh my God. The next headline: recriminations plague Russian forces.
Before you go on, I want to say it seems like, especially in these times of the war in Europe, with Russia being such an aggressor, it's really hard to talk about the peace movement. It's really hard to talk about an anti-war movement, and yet I remain committed that the only way to peace is peace. Right? We can't fight our way to peace. And so whatever can bring the resolution of this war, sanctions, peace talks, what can we do as a global society to really advance the causes of peace? And I just want to say this about that. When I start to feel kind of hopeless and like maybe I'm the last one, maybe there's a couple others. I was at a Kaiser doctor's appointment yesterday, and I'm sitting in the waiting room, and I glanced down at the table, that used to have magazines, but now it seems like there's not really magazines to flip through anymore because you don't want a lot of shared touch objects. But where magazines would have been sitting in the past, somebody left War Resisters League literature, and I was so excited to see it. So whoever out there left War Resisters League literature in the Interstate Kaiser, my hat's off to you. And let us remember that we can always leave silent agitators where we go, and just sort of remember that there are many ways to broaden the discourse and to let folks know that some people want to advance peace. All right, carry on.
All right. I'll just suffice to say that my opinion is somewhat different. And then going through these headlines, as I was saying, there are let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 headlines in New York Times about what's happening in Ukraine. And as I was saying, the reporting is very gritty. Recriminations plague Russian forces as Ukraine steps up pressure. Oh, and what I wanted to say is, no, this isn't the counteroffensive, because the counteroffensive would surely involve at least airstrikes and major tank movements and artillery strikes, because this is trench warfare at this point, and that's the only way you can do an offensive in that situation. China will send an envoy to Russia and Ukraine in a quest for peace talks. So there you go. That's something happening. And Zelensky's comments about needing more time for a successful counteroffensive set off a debate on any hidden agenda. I was going to look that one up, and I don't know what it means. Russian ordered evacuations near Ukraine's Zaporizhzhia nuclear plant alarm officials. Now, that should alarm anybody because Chernobyl. Turkey says talks about extending the grain deal are positive. And Japan says NATO is in talks about opening an office in the country as the two seek stronger ties. So things are happening big time. I really don't think it's the big vaunted offensive. Changing topics. CNN set anti-rape efforts back 20 years this week by setting up an interview with rapist Donald Trump and his supporters present in tow. As his supporters responded with laughter, he mocked his victim. Journalist organizations across the world have responded with revulsion. Trump also got a platform to, I gotta adjust my teleprompter here. Trump also got a platform to deny once again the fact that he had lost the 2020 election, calling January 6, 2020 a beautiful day. It is beginning to be apparent that the Constitution will not be in effect for the upcoming presidential election, though the 14th Amendment, enacted after the Civil War, makes it clear that persons engaging in insurrection cannot hold office. And this is just another aspect of this march of fascism that has so alarmed me. And I am also alarmed by the fact that it's still considered political simply to identify fascism as it moves forward. There isn't another term for it. It's not mild fascism.
No.
I mean, the only mild thing is that Trump is not back in power. It's a severe situation, and I think we need to be talking about fascism, what it means, how it works, and not just not being polite about MAGA Republicans because they are fascists. And this is my teleprompter.
I think it's important again to see CNN exposed for the organization they are. You know, they have never. I loved when people would say that they were lying liberal media. These were the same folks that brought us the Gulf War. These were the same folks that brought us Gulf War II. These are the folks that engaged in shock and awe reporting. They are not on our side. They've never been on our side. And now they prove once again that they are sycophants to power.
To the degree that they would get news in advance of naval movements and have their reporters embedded on aircraft carriers when the missiles are launched.
Embedded is really it. They really carved that niche for embedded reporting.
Embedded. Even, you know,
mild fascism akin to mild pregnancy or mild death. Thank you, John, for the astute comparisons. Yes.
Hi, John. Well, yeah, and just it's hard to say enough about putting a rapist on to talk down his victim after he'd been found liable for the rape. Well, not actually for the rape itself. Okay, for sexual assault, we can be
sexual assault defamation.
Yeah, we can.
Yeah.
Split hairs over that. Even by the official count, hundreds of people, according to the end these times, in the United States are dying of COVID-19 daily. In recent months, more than half of all COVID deaths have been among people who are fully vaccinated. Millions more are experiencing the disabling effects of long COVID, a condition our systems of healthcare and social welfare have struggled to appropriately address. The official policy for medically vulnerable populations, the disabled, the immunocompromised, and older people is that they politely remove themselves from society. Back to normal is not intended for them. The Biden administration, has been chiefly responsible for normalizing this ongoing tragedy, and that work is set to culminate this spring. On May 11th, the Biden administration ended the official designation of COVID as a public health emergency, just 1,200 days after it was first declared. This act will close the states' assumed primary responsibility for the pandemic and its effects, and heralds the beginning of the next era of COVID, one in which the private market rules the pandemic response. So here we go. And so that's it for the headlines. We'll see that Neo is engaging in his traditional skittering about. So if you hear the tippy tap of little dog nails, actually they're pretty large dog nails, then that's what's going
He's
on.
a pretty large dog.
And if you hear a ferocious slurping, you know that he's started engaging in his usual.
Carry on, shall we? Shall we not?
Oh boy.
Oh.
So,
excuse me.
with the immigration situation becoming more dramatic, I want to ask, why exactly is it that the arrival of desperate people at the southern borders, why is that a crisis? I mean, has anyone actually worked out what there is to be afraid of? I'm not talking about the right wing's counterfactual fears that these families are bringing the death squads with them. A ridiculous idea that the victims are their own tormentors. It's not true. I mean, they are fleeing death squads. I'm asking, how would it work out in the long and short term just to let them in? What are we afraid of? We say disease, but I think that is simply driven by racism. If it's disease, they're the ones that should be afraid entering a nation which basic protections against a pandemic have just been lifted and politicized to the point that there's an obvious disproportion of deaths among right-wingers. And after all, when it comes to health, the refugees have walked for hundreds of miles and are clearly among the most athletic of demographic groups. Florida has banned migrant workers now, and the photographs are hitting the press of crops rotting in the field, strawberries rotting in the field. U.S. factories are so desperate for workers that they're trying to hire children. What is so bad about letting the refugees in? And again, pardon me for answering my own question. Of course, this is about racism. We're afraid of them. They speak Spanish. They're brown. They're different. This is xenophobia and racism. And it is racism that would have been endemic amongst the white population anyway, but now has been fanned to a hot flame by the Trump administration. And this is what we're facing today. Quoting, I want to say, if the hordes were blue-eyed Ukrainians, there would be little or no objection to letting them in. And don't try to counter with the odd Ukrainian and the hordes at the border, getting the same treatment by a conflation. That is happening, but I'm talking about how the U.S. electorate would respond to a torrent of blonde-haired heads massing at the border. We all know that would be seen differently. Quoting world socialists, joining Border Police and Department of Homeland Security contractors are thousands of U.S. military personnel armed with drones, Humvees, and automatic machine guns. So far, President Joe Biden, I just realized that's a redundancy, automatic guns, machine guns, whatever. So far, President Joe Biden has authorized 1,500 troops to be deployed to South Texas. This is on top of the 2,500 Texas National Guard troops already deployed as part of Governor Greg Abbott's Operation Lone Star. For a total of 4,000 military personnel in Texas, the U.S. government's militarized crackdown on immigrants is being joined on the other side of the border by Mexican President Andres Manuel López Obrador. At this point, writing, the Mexican government has 25,000 soldiers deployed along the border, bringing the total number of armed U.S. and Mexican border agents and military adjuncts to over 50,000. The ACLU's Jonathan Blazer says, quote, President Biden, just ushered in a new period of immense suffering for people already enduring violence and persecution. He has closed off the possibility of asylum in the U.S. to the majority of people seeking safety in contradiction with our nation's laws and values. And so he's finishing Trump's job rather than fulfilling his own campaign promises. This is a somber day for our country and for refugees in desperate search of safety, but the fight is far from over. And the ACLU just tweeted, we are suing to stop Biden's new asylum ban, which closes off access to safety for the majority of people seeking asylum in the United States. And if I've mentioned many times before, the United States set up this situation by destabilizing countries, starting with Guatemala in 1954, simply for the profits of U.S. corporations, which benefited greatly from the peasant and near slave status of people, of poor people in Central America.
Yeah.
And those governments are still grossly unstable, and that's been maintained by the CIA after all these years. You were saying?
No, absolutely. And that's why the very cold and dehumanizing language of the Biden administration officials talking about the people, the very real humans who are looking to escape violence and the violence of poverty, the violence of climate change, as they are leaving life-threatening situations and seeking, the promise of asylum in this country. It really hits me. It hits me that dehumanizing language, basically, in the overarching feeling that these people are little better than vermin who are, just crawling through any nooks and crannies to invade the country with their not sure what, with their foreignness, with their poverty. Um, it sickens me because not only is it wrong to speak of any humans this way, it really does absolutely deny our responsibility in creating the disasters that these people are escaping, or attempting to escape. We have, caused by racism, expressed in colonialism, advanced through neoliberalism, and enhanced through the war on drugs. We have created this situation brick by brick. And so to deny people asylum from as the result, as they're fleeing violence as a result of our own policies and our own doing, our own economic system, it is the height of evil. And I am appalled and stand with the refugees. We must do what we can right now to put ourselves in the mix of the humanitarian crisis, to send aid to help humanize the people who are actually uh, um, seeking to continue their lives, uh, and have left their home communities thousands and thousands of miles ago to do so.
It's often been commented that empires eventually turn on themselves, and we see this now. The same attitude that had the CIA flying in machine guns on push-pull Cessna planes into little airstrips and around Tegucigalpa, uh, that aided the complete genocide of the town of El Mozote. Their grandkids are coming up now to the border, and they don't want revenge. They just want jobs, and they're obviously very capable. Um, so I think that there is that moral onus to let them in, and the fascism.
And there's international law for
There is
asylum
international
seekers,
law, and
little things like that.
which the U.S. often scoffs at. The U.S. either invokes it or scoffs at it, depending on what's more convenient. It seems because it's the big bully on the block, and that fascism is being brought to bear against all of us in the form of the head of the Treasury saying that he's worried about the labor market not cooling off. And what he means is our historically grotesque disproportion of wealth is in danger of not getting even worse. In other words, workers are poor. He intends to make them more poor because when he talks about cooling off the labor market, he means lowering the wages and benefits of everyone. He wants us to be more miserable. He has his own special, fancy little ways of talking about it, but he is actively working to destroy people's jobs. And that's who is ruling us now. And if you look at the structure of the Federal Reserve, it's not in any way a democratic institution. It scarcely has any democratic controls. So we have work to do in terms of overthrowing capitalism in this country. And I'm just glad to see that Gen Z is, not having it by and large. It's scared the crap out of the Republicans, the fascist party. We have a fascist party and a go along with the fascist parties. It's depressing if you think about it in those terms. But I do see some movement. And as an old commie, I used to say anarcho-commie until I reread the Grundrisse and realized that the Stalinists had and the Leninists had so co-opted that work that just to be a little C commie is to be an anarcho-commie. And so that's why I call myself now a little C commie. For commies like me, there is something to be encouraged by. It's happening. Boy, I dangled that participle, didn't I? I don't care. I'm encouraged.
Okay. So, what else do you have there?
That is all that I had prepared for this week's show.
All right. Well, I want to just throw to people's attention that there is an article that came out on Common Dreams today that amongst all manner of very bad things, all manner of legislation, really, well, let's just say the assault on trans rights in Missouri, that among, as all this is happening, Kansas City has declared itself to be an LGBTQ sanctuary. And I have not really fully digested this article, but I'm interested in seeing that. And I've been wondering if, in fact, we're going to start seeing sanctuary cities for the LGBTQ communities across the country, especially in the states that don't perhaps have the, extremely repressive and hateful laws on the books at this time. Can we in fact say this is a humanitarian crisis within our borders, and we will not stand by and see our fellow folks in this country treated in this manner? Can we speak out and demand sanctuary movements in this country for the LGBTQ communities? I ask as a queer person.
I think it's a good question. And congratulations on getting through that thought while the cat did her best to interrupt.
I'm used to Libby dancing around while I try to think. Let's see, what else was there on that? I do want to say that Teresa and I saw the movie Joyland last night. Joyland is Pakistani film, I think.
Yes,
Um,
and it is in Urdu with English subtitles.
and it is a fantastic film that really, hi Libby, that I think does a wonderful job on actually talking about the harm that the patriarchy does to everyone. There is no one in this film that is not harmed by patriarchy, including the patriarch. So
It's also just artistically stunning. It's an excellent addition to the humanities, and I would recommend anyone see it. I would especially recommend that MAGA heads in the South see it. Of course, they're not going to, but I'd love to see it better distributed, better known, and more talked about, because they take the patriarchy to task, and it's in the frame of Pakistani Islamic patriarchy, but it applies.
patriarchy is patriarchy, right?
Yeah, it's very Texan.
I was going to say, it feels a whole lot like
Yeah.
the radical right in this country. All right, so with that, I'm going to turn our attention to, the more spiritually inclined aspects of the show. That is to say, we are looking at the waning moon cycle right now. I believe the new moon is next Friday, the 19th. And so until then, it is a good time to focus on gratitude for what we've received, and also to really pay attention uh, to what it is that is no longer serving us. It is an excellent time, an excellent moon cycle to actually start ridding yourself of things that are weighing you down and holding you back. Time to clear out and do the spring cleanings. And that can be on the physical, and it can also be on your own attitudinals. Are there things that you're doing that are no longer really all that good for you, that you don't feel that good about? Are there ways that you're thinking that are limiting or routinized? This is time to clean out the closets and clean out the cobwebs and refresh yourself for the cycles to come. And this is exactly what the cards say for this week. We have the ever popular Wheel of Fortune, we have the Devil, and we have the Three of Wands. And what these, Three of Wands down, what these cards mean basically is just that. There are awesome creative opportunities or good opportunities to try new things on the horizon, and things that will enhance our creative selves, that will enhance the fullness of our lives when it comes to knowing ourselves, our will, and expressing it through our creative efforts, whether that's our speech, our gifts of song, our gifts of movement and dance, however it is we express ourselves. That is, however, kind of being it's a little out there. There's a little hurdle to jump, and that hurdle is things that are holding you back. And those are usually self-inflicted things, as opposed to those thoughts and attitudes that are oppressive from the society outside of our own heads. Sometimes we're pretty good at doing it to ourselves through becoming having parts of our lives becoming routinized. Sometimes that's just really just taking the same route to the same place and doing the same thing because, well, it was convenient once and it kind of got stuck there. Sometimes it's good to challenge yourself and try new things. Maybe you have fallen into habits that aren't good for you, whether that's substances or types of food or uh, doing doing stuff that just it's not feeding you in the right ways, right? And it's stopping you from getting to where you want to be. It's time to take serious accounting of that and slip your own leash, as it were, as this card in particular, this deck lets us visualize it as really slipping free of our own confines. And first, that means analyzing where our confines are, right? See how you are playing a role in sort of going through the motions and holding yourself back. And then the Wheel of Fortune again, it's things change, things are always shifting. Fate takes a hand, and now at this point, it's not like you have a whole lot of say in it. There are other times where it feels a little more positive, a little more like you have some say in where it's going. But because of that routinization, because we sometimes let ourselves act with blinders, it's a little harder at this point to do that. So you might want to just focus on freeing some attitudes, freeing some habits, freeing your space, freeing yourself in whatever ways you need to. And that opens you up to that creative potential, those opportunities, new experiences that are right there. That's what I got.
All right, then.
Happy spring, right? It finally feels like we are in summer. And I don't know, I feel much renewal from sun. I realized yesterday um, that, wow, I really actually needed sunglasses for the first time in like 8 months. Well, I guess more like 7 months, and that felt really good. So enjoy each other, enjoy yourselves, and free yourselves from repressive thoughts.
Right on. I just want to add something for the next few months coming up. Watch out. Watch out for heat. Watch out for storms. This is going to be the year.
Well, yeah, I mean, right? Climate chaos is with us. So there we have that. Thanks very much for joining us.
Yes, and thanks for the comments.
Please do subscribe if you haven't already. Share this video. Talk about us, please. Have other people subscribe. See what you can do.
And Jabara, it is Joyland, Joyland, just as you have it there.
Yes.
Okay, say
And
goodbye, you little devil. Goodbye.
And with that, please do. Oh yeah, hit the subscribe button. I said that. Hit the bell. Hit the notifications, and leave comments below if you have suggestions for the show, or questions that you'd like us to debate and address, and all that kind of good stuff coming up. With that, we love you.
Our love goes out to you and to all the ships at sea and all the kitty cats.
Hit the like button, and we'll see you next week.
Jesus, bird.